Liz, what conversations did you have with Julian Fellows, and when did you have them?
Well, obviously, because we were embarking on something that was really quite huge for us to do. It was clear we had to. If we were going to do a movie, it had to stand on its own, and it had to be. Obviously, we had some key cast, and most people don't embark on making a movie with 20 key characters plus guest cast. But once we start, and Julian came up with this idea, we knew we had to get the narrative to really pull all the characters together and all the storylines together. But of course, when you've got so many casts, you have to have multiple storylines. And I think Julian is a master of weaving those storylines in and out. I really do.
Was the 3-year gap just strictly trying to get everybody together?
I know the very good folk at Carnival who were doing all the deals said trying to get this cast together for this film made Brexit look like a walk in the park.
Liz, how would you respond to anyone who might say this is just another episode?
No, I would honestly say, look, I think there's a real argument that says trying to turn a television series that's been as successful as Downton was into a movie that delivers is the hardest thing, because you've got so much baggage you've got to overcome. Of course, it's got its benefits because you have an audience. But as I said, we set out, we knew this had to stand on its own. And we've been incredibly gratified by the feedback from people who said they'd never seen this TV show, but they loved the film. So I think it does stand up on its own.
Well, there you have it.
Thank you.
What gave you the biggest headache, and what are you the most proud of?
Oh, for sure. We'd had some practice at doing big ball scenes, but the King's troupe, it was the first time they had ever taken part in any fiction. They are the ceremonial wing for the Queen, so we prayed nothing was going to happen on the few days that we had them with us. But we had to move 100 horses, 80 people, and 6 gun carriages from Woolwich in southeast London to a small village in the West Country in England. And the location department turned 2 huge fields into an army encampment, complete with grooms and stables and tacking rooms and barracks and mess rooms. It was incredible. And those guys were so brilliant with those horses. Wow, they were fantastic. And there was one time they were doing they did a circuit for the street scenes, and one of the riders fell off. And we were thinking, no. And then it just got back up and got on again and then carried on as if nothing had happened. It was extraordinary.
Well, Anna, do you want to tell us a little bit about your process and your prep?
I guess that's the thing from having been on the series, is that I've worked with the characters in my head and worked with the cast for a number of years already. So I had this really lovely shorthand. I could spot an Edith original across a shop within 10 seconds, which meant that I was kind of already up to speed when it came on to prepping the film, and was then able to spend more time considering our new characters and sort of researching the sort of new characters that came in and the real life depictions of the King and Queen. It was a kind of familiarity that was amazing, but it was also quite challenging because I used to have 9 episodes, hundreds of costumes per character for the upstairs to tell
Sorry,
a story. But to tell a story through clothing over 9 episodes is almost easier than doing it with one film, where I had to be much more considered about what clothes I put on each character, because it was a much more edited, considered version of the whole series.
There was something about was it the Queen's dress you were telling us about earlier?
Oh, yeah. So Queen Mary was an incredible character to costume design for, and such a challenge to design for real-life characters. And there's a huge amount of reference out there to kind of work from. And I had an idea of how I wanted her ball gown to be, having gathered just images of her in evening wear. And I worked with Cosprop and John Bright, who had some clothing that belonged to Queen Mary for me to look at and see how her clothing was put together, the construction, the level of embellishment. And so we were sort of going through that process, and then he said, "Oh, hang on a second, I've got some fabric that belonged to her that was also left." And so he brought out this roll of silk silver lame that happened to perfectly marry up to this piece of silver lace that I'd found that I wanted to be the starting point for the design. And it was like this perfect marriage of fabric. So the skirt that Geraldine James wears as Queen Mary in the ball gown, in the ball scene, belonged to Queen Mary herself.
So Lesley, when you're in your scenes with Daisy, played by Sophie McShera, you know, the maternal side comes out a little bit. Is that something that you and Julian talked about to try to bring out, or is that something that sort of developed naturally?
No, we never discussed it at all. What I gathered only recently that Mrs. Patmore, for instance, was not in his head originally going to be funny. But what Julian did with everybody was he sort of clocked what people's strengths were, and it was my utter good fortune that I got to play with Sophie McShera, because the minute I met that girl, I just fell in love with her, and I loved working with her every minute of it. She's a great little actress, and she's a brilliant person to be around, and she's hilariously funny, and he could see that between us, and so he started writing a double act. But because we are very fond of each other, she calls me Telly Mummy. I mean, in a way, we've grown up with the youngsters, haven't we? We've seen them grow up, and we've gone with them. So that's why it went in that direction, without any doubt. He just saw that between us, and he made it work for those characters, and he did that with everybody, I would say.
So Alan, you're the family fixer, I think, and you remind me of another famous Tom in the movies, and that would be Robert Duvall's Tom in The Godfather. Because you're sort of the outside. You're in the family, but you're kind of on the outside. But you're the guy that gets it all done.
Yes.
How do you feel about that?
I was delighted when I got the script. I was very surprised that Tom had so many elements. I mean, he became Dr. Phil to the royal family, which was nice. But and all the different elements, and I was so happy to see that love story begin to blossom, because it's something that I felt that Tom really deserved at the end of season 6. And for a long time he's been on his own in that house. So, and what I also love is the fact that what Julian did so cleverly is Tom's always been a victim of circumstance. Mm-hmm. He really didn't ask for this life. He fell in love with a girl who sadly passed away due to contract negotiations. And and then, so but Julian took the braver choice to leave Tom there. But what I love is in Lucy, he's found someone who's a victim of circumstance too. And I love that idea. And I have to say that scene at the very end when they're dancing outside was never scripted. And it was completely the idea of that lady there, Liz Trubridge.
Well done.
I'm a romantic.
Who created it. And our other producer, Gareth Neame, said, "It'll never make the movie." And it
Proves him wrong.
And it most certainly did, and I love it because I think it's a lovely full stop for his story as well.
Do you still take the Underground around London, and are you not recognised?
I do. Yeah, I would say a lot of us still do public. Well, I do public transport.
Yeah, totally.
And you do get recognised. The most enjoyable thing is, especially when the show used to be on, that someone would get on a Monday morning after it had been on, and turn to you and go, "Oh, hey, how are you? Have you been? Good. Yeah, great. No, I don't know you." I was like, "Do you watch the TV?" And they go, okay. And then they normally get off at the next stop because they feel a bit awkward. Yeah.
Well, Elizabeth, do you feel like you have sort of infused Cora with some uniquely American attributes?
Well, I hope so. I think that's inevitable given the fact that I am American and I'm playing the part. It's hard to avoid. I mean, I tried from the beginning to fight for my point of view as an American, to say, but, you know, I would do things differently. I would think about things differently. I wouldn't. And I think, I did feel that the script reflected that often Cora was able to be more flexible when it comes to the traditional line on issues, and I think that is the benefit of the culture she comes from.
And Hugh, you know, Lord Grantham, he's still the Lord of the Manor, and every problem is still his problem. Is there anything that you, that wasn't on the page that you felt like you brought to Robert to help him sort of navigate all of this?
I think I brought an immense sense of being in retirement, really. Well, if you think about it, you know, Mary's running the household. Even Violet says, you know, you're the next generation. I'm thinking, hang on, what about? I'm still alive, you know.
Right, I'm still here. I can hear you.
But that sense of handing on was always there. You know, particularly with Tom and Mary as characters towards the end of the TV show, and that baton is still in the process of being passed on. But that patriarchal figure, I mean, yes, I think it's delicious. It's a bit like Mr. Bennet in Pride and Prejudice. You know that there's this sort of whirlwind of women actually running things and driving, and he'd just rather be in his study hiding from it all. But the key character, let's not forget, is the castle. And without getting too sort of philosophical and sentimental, it is a microcosm of the world. It will, as Mr. Carson says at the end, in 100 years' time, it will still be here. And the next generation will have taken it on. And our entire, my character was born to the duty of preserving this place and passing it on as best as possible. As in the same way we are on this planet to try and pass it on as best as possible. At the moment, we're not making a great job of it, let's face it. And I think that, again, is something that the audience relates to. They identify with this sense of place, this iconic building in the middle of a landscape that has been there for generations and will be there for generations, and we're all passing through. And each one of us knows what it's like to be one of us, I think. And I think that's, again, a key element of the show.
What are you most proud of in this film?
I would say each and every member of not only the cast and crew that have managed to take a very small period drama that I believe when we started it, we all hoped it would do well, but the fact that we've taken that through 6 seasons and now to the film makes it's such a sense of pride for all of us, because we are a family and we are an ensemble in so many ways. And for me, it's the culmination of great friends, great family, great actors, great technicians, wonderful artists. So that's what I'm most proud of.
I think I would say, as an actor, to be allowed to be in something that has truly touched people and made them apparently this happy is it's why you joined in the first place, really. And not everybody gets the chance to have one of these. So I'm extremely proud to be part of that, for sure.
I think I would add to that the responses we've had, not only to the TV show, but particularly now to the movie, we've had so many responses already saying it's like being back with an old friend. And if you think back to when the TV show, for those who followed the TV show, it finished in 2015. The world was a very, very different place then, both in your country and ours. And yes, the show in itself, by its very nature, has a sort of rose-tinted glow about it. It is about a different age, but it's also about a different age that when we were watching it. And we are in a very peculiar state now, certainly in our country. I won't speak for yours, but we are in a very peculiar place in our country. And our sense of national identity is all over the place. We don't have a sense of national identity. We have families who are split down the middle. The story, the tone, the flavour of Downton, whether its social structure is right or wrong, it knew its structure, it knew its identity. The people who live and work there know how they function, how they get through their life in that house. And I think there is a great reassurance in that. And I think our timing, as it was when the TV show came out, is rather appropriate. People have said it's wonderful to escape into something that is reassuring for a couple of hours, and that's what our business is about.
Thank you all.
Thank you.
Help me thank this terrific group of filmmakers.